Behind every successful endeavor in life is a relationship built on trust. Welcome to The Trust Doctor, restoring trust and enriching significant relationships. A podcast focused on helping you nurture healthy relationships. Join thought leader and world-renowned expert on relationship and empowerment coaching, Dr. Patty Ann, and her special guests every week for insightful and meaningful conversations filled with great takeaways that will help you build healthier business partnerships and happier romantic relationships. Are you ready to restore trust and enrich the significant relationships in your life? The Trust Doctor, Dr. Patty Ann, is in.
Welcome to today's episode of The Trust Doctor, restoring trust and enriching significant relationships. And you are in for a treat today. But before we go any further, since I know you are going to love this episode, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe to the podcast. So today, our special guest is a man named Jeff Lerner. And this guy has been around the block more than a couple of times. He went from being a broke musician, a professional jazz player, and a pianist to a serial entrepreneur who has been incredibly successful. And he is currently the founder of the world's first, and I think only, higher institute of learning for entrepreneurs. So welcome, Jeff Lerner, and put on your seatbelts because Jeff is going to take us for a ride.
Well, I'm so glad to be here, Dr. Do you go by Dr. Patty Ann, Dr.
Yeah,
Copeland?
Dr. Patty Ann. No, Dr. Patty Ann.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Some people call me DPA.
Yeah, all right. Well, I'll just doctor. I like having friends that are prestigious, so we're just going to go with doctor.
Well, but since we both spent time in New York, it can also be doctor.
Doctor. Yeah, that's right. No, well, I appreciate it. I'm so glad to be here. I've become recently a fan. My booker said, you're going to be on this show with Dr. Patty Ann. You need to, and I went into your world and I'm like, oh my gosh, I am so into this stuff. Like relationships, emotional coaching. Like I know enough to be dangerous in the psychology world and probably enough to do some damage, but I love talking about it. So I'm really glad to be here and happy to serve your audience.
Thank you so much. We are privileged to have you. So you have been really to hell and back, broke to an Uber millionaire, bazillionaire. So share with us your journey. Start anywhere you want. You know us. We all love a feel-good story, and I think you got one for us.
Yeah, I do. I've got a little bit of that proverbial rags to riches, Horatio Alger kind of the American dream story. So I started with an American nightmare. Not really. I have no regrets and no lamentations. I've been very blessed my whole life. Even when I was broke and struggling, I was very blessed. But, I grew up with successful parents. My mom was an attorney.
What do you mean? Yeah, what were they?
My mom was an attorney, and she was a very, very good, smart attorney. She was I think the second female partner at one of the 5 biggest law firms in the country.
Go Mom, which one?
Fulbright and Jaworski.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Heard of
which
it.
is now Norton Rose Fulbright. And so she was a brilliant woman.
What kind of law does she practice? I'm just curious. Sounds like litigation.
No, she actually did trust and estate planning. So my mom was also like a great caretaker of people. Mm-hmm. And so by being in trusts and estates, she got to work with people. She got to prepare people for a very hard thing that they were going to go through, and then also get to kind of counsel them through that hard time. Mm-hmm. And she always felt like her work made people's lives easier, which is not something all attorneys can really say, right?
Well, you know what Shakespeare said about attorneys, right?
No, tell me.
Yeah. The first thing we should do is kill all the attorneys. But that wasn't your mom.
No. Yeah, we would have wanted to leave her alone. She was a pretty special woman. And then my dad was a money manager. So like my parents were high-end, white collar, successful professionals. But that came with some really high standards. And I think the expectation was, I'll go to a private school. I'll get good grades. I'll get into a.
Where'd you grow up, Jeff? Where'd you grow up?
Houston, Texas.
Okay.
City with a lot of money, oil and gas,
Oil money,
tons of energy money. And I So I went to a private school and I was around people. My parents were successful, but I was around really rich people growing up. Like I saw people that
black gold.
Yeah, exactly. And, people that the major streets in Houston were like named after, had the same last name, the same name as like the last names of kids I went to school with. Right.
Like
and so it was really weird. That was my track, but I just never fit. I never saw myself going to college. I never saw myself getting some job and punching a clock. There was no amount of money that seemed interesting to me to say, I'm going to give up my time. And, I had a lot of problems in school. Frankly, I've done a lot of therapy now, so I have a pretty good sense of what was going on with me back then. But I think one thing that's important to know is I was born with a genetic condition called Waardenburg syndrome. So as a young child, Waardenburg.
Sorry, say that. Waardenburg?
Yeah, Waardenburg. And it's a craniofacial, it's a syndrome that has, it's multi-aspected, but part of it is a mild, what I would call mild craniofacial disfigurement. So like growing up, I kind of just didn't look like the other kids. I looked like, to be maybe politically incorrect, I looked like I might've been mildly retarded growing up, or whatever the politically correct term is for that. But I got bullied horribly. And the thing is, I was a really smart kid. So it was really frustrating. People say, oh, he's the idiot kid and, whatever. Or they were just mean and you know how kids are, whatever. So that was a really defining piece of my life is like, and I knew from an early age that I had this genetic condition. So I kind of developed this notion in my mind of like, I'm defective. I'm not quite a fit with this species. Like I'm like a Homo sapiens prime, like a slight variation. Like I never really felt like a human, as weird as that may be.
I have to ask you honestly, because I'm looking at you.
Yeah.
I don't see anything abnormal about your face. Did you have surgery? Does it have?
So I was actually very fortunate to break my nose multiple times. And so I was able to go in and say, fix this. And by the way, fix it, right? Like, don't just put it back, but like make it better. So I did have my nose reconstructed because I broke it 3 times in high school playing sports and stuff. So when I was 16, I guess I got a nose job, whatever. But no, mostly I just grew out of it. And to be honest, it was probably never as big a deal as I thought it was in the first place. But when you're a kid, you make a mountain out of every molehill. And
because honestly, Jeff, if you would have been that disfigured with the means that your parents had growing up, I'm sure they would have had surgery done.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Right?
And I think it was more like it was enough. And I could show you pictures of me as a kid. And here's the thing, it still crops up because I'll give you an example. Like 10 years ago when I met my wife, there were members
First one or second one?
Third one.
Oh, third one's a charm. Okay, we'll get to that.
It is the charm.
We'll get to that.
My current wife is amazing. But when I met her, there were actually members of her family that asked her, and they said, is there something wrong with him? He looks like something might be a little.
Years ago. This was 10 years ago.
Maybe 11, but yeah, a little over 10 years ago. So it's like, it's subtle. And, I'm a lot more like, I didn't, until I was 35, I never talked about it. It was like this dark secret that was a source of shame. But anyway, so I think that always kind of contributed to my sense of alienation and I never really integrated very well socially. So I ended up fast forward, I dropped out of high school my junior year.
Oh my gosh, your parents must have been beside themselves.
They weren't super stoked, but when the truancy officer called my home and said, Jeff has missed, 20 of the last 30 days of school. He hasn't even been to school. They were like, so what are you doing during the day? And I said, I'm literally driving my car to a parking lot, just sleeping in my car because I'm staying up all night because I'm starting to develop this passion for music. I came clean. I was like, I stay up all night writing music and practicing my keyboard. And then I drive to a vacant parking lot and sleep during the day. And they were like, well, okay. And they were real matter of fact. They basically said, look, we'll pull you out of school, but prospects aren't that great for high school dropouts. So as long as you're willing to sleep in your bed, if this is the one you want to make, then we'll pull you out. And they did. They pulled me out. And
good for them. Good for them.
I know. And what they
was really progressive. That must have been difficult for them.
Fantastic. Yeah. And they bought me a piano. They said, okay, if you're going to be a musician, you probably ought to start practicing. Yeah. And I didn't start playing piano till I was 16. So I went all in on becoming a musician without any experience, or I knew that I was reasonably proficient, but I wasn't like I was some kid prodigy.
Let me ask you a question though. Were you good at math? Were you good at numbers? I don't mean in school, but I mean numbers.
I am very good with numbers.
So, there's a correlation there, right?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a reasonable suspicion that I was going to be a fairly talented musician, but what I've learned is starting that late, there's a biomechanical deficiency that I learned has a lot to do with whether or not you started before or after puberty. So starting after puberty, especially for men, when your tissues have kind of hardened.
It's the blueprint. Like it's the blueprint.
Yeah. So I never really got that early pedagogy to train it into my arms and my hands. Mm-hmm. So I ended up developing physical problems later, but that's, anyway, the point is I dropped out of high school, I started practicing piano like 12 hours a day, like a total psychopath. I just would sit at my piano for like 12 hours and not leave.
We call that passion, Jeff.
Passion. Thank you. That's passion. A better term. And by 18, so my parents moved away at 18. They actually retired when I was 18 years old. And they were like, well, you can't come with us. You're 18. We told you we'd get you to 18. And I had to go out and start beating the streets to make a living as a musician. And I started taking gigs for food initially, and finally got good enough to start charging for my services. And by 19, I had actually auditioned my way into college in a music program, even though I didn't have a high school degree. And within another year,
I was like Berkeley or
no, it was University of Houston. So the big state school in Houston, but they actually had a kind of a micro conservatory within the school, the Moore School, that had a big endowment from John Moores, who's a software guy. So, they're a really awesome music program. And I ended up getting a full scholarship. I played jazz piano, got all my school paid for, and I was a working pianist all through my 20s. And it really helped shift my life because I ended up among the, I probably played 3,000 gigs, or I played a huge number of gigs.
Did you travel like internationally, or did you stay local?
I did a little bit of international travel. So I had like a 2-week gig with the United States Navy where I went to Japan and played all the naval bases in Japan. And a lot more domestic US travel. I'd go to like college festivals and play in bands and stuff. But most of my work was 6 to 8 gigs a week of whatever I could get in Houston. I would, like, when the Broadway shows would come through town, I would play down in the pit. But I played a lot of private parties, and this was a really key piece of my story. So, I was young. I would show up on time. I was hardworking. I would show up on time. I was polite. I was articulate. I shaved. I didn't smell like cigarettes. Like, I was very, if you take, I'm not going to paint everyone with the same brush, but if you take all the working pianists in the world and say, rate them on a scale of 1 to 10 for who's presentable, I was probably like a 9. You can
put a noun and a verb together in the correct tense. So high society in Houston said, all right, let the kid in.
You nailed it. Yeah. And I didn't steal the silverware. Right. So I
check a couple of times.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They had a strict coat check policy, but I ended up getting booked in the homes of multiple billionaires. So, names that people know: Tillman Fertitta, the guy that has that show called $1 Billion Buyer. I used to play piano at his house. Bob McNair, who owned the Houston Texans, Jim Crane, who currently owns the Houston Astros, Tillman owns the Rockets now, Les Alexander, who used to own the Rockets, Drayton McClain, who used to own the Astros. Like, I played at all these guys' houses in Houston. And I would get to the gig in like an hour early just to set up and figure, before the guests started arriving. So it would be like me and the caterers and the host just chilling. And I would get to ask billionaires about their life. So how'd you make all this money? Like, what do you do for a living? And they would tell me, and to a person, every one of them, entrepreneurs. All the richest people
owning their own business. They all
own their own businesses, and they build cash flow producing assets. So I got upset between that and reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. I got obsessed.
Exactly what I thought as you said that. Yeah.
Yeah. I got obsessed in my early 20s with building cash flow producing assets, even while I was a broke musician, never making more than $40,000 or $50,000 a year. And, I ended up failing at about a dozen different businesses that I don't need to take you through that whole saga, but.
Oh no. Yes. Take us through one.
Well, I did a lot of different.
We know our failure it plays a pivotal role in our success. So let the listeners learn from you.
Well,
Give one.
I mean, I had a litany of them. I'll give you a few. I mean, I was doing whatever I could. So, the Rich Dad Poor Dad thing, I started trying to flip houses. I would do cash advances off credit cards and go buy dilapidated houses and get ripped off by contractors. And that didn't really seem to pan out. I actually started a party promotion company and tried to produce raves, these big parties where you would rent a warehouse and kids would, And I had some cool stories. I invited like Wu-Tang Clan to one of them, and I got to hang out with Method Man, and I met Busta Rhymes, but ended up getting ripped off by like the mob, not the mob, but like the Houston black out, I don't know what you call it, black market party scene people that just steal.
It could be a dirty. Every business can have a dirty element to it, right?
Yeah, that was an exciting one. I would have a rave. We'd have 1,000 people lined up outside, and they would call the fire marshal. They would call in a fire threat. So the fire marshal would come and not let anybody in, and everybody would leave, and we lose all our money. I mean, it's that kind of stuff, right? So there was that.
That's evil.
It is. Yeah. I had a booking agency. I had, ultimately my undoing was when I was 27, in 2006, when the banks were completely insane and they would literally give money to dead people.
Right before the crash, and you're in Houston now. So real estate's through the roof, right? We know it's cyclical over there.
Right.
Okay.
So I was able to borrow about $400,000 to open 2 franchise restaurants with federally backed SBA loan, Small Business Administration loan. And they gave it to some 27-year-old jazz musician who'd never made any money and had no successful business experience, right?
Like you said, they'd give it to anybody.
And so the timing was awful. I got the stores open in 2007. The crash happened. By 2008, I was $495,000 in debt. I had 2 closed stores. I had the U.S. Treasury coming after me because when you default on SBA loans, the federal government guarantees the bank, and then they come after you for the money. So effectively at 28 years old, I owed the federal government over $300,000. I owed 2 big real estate investment companies probably $50,000 each for leases that I defaulted on, plus the state of Texas sales tax, unemployment tax, the Texas Workforce Commission, and they were all coming after me. My wife was like, and this, so I was married, and she was like,
"Which number was this?"
This was number 2.
Number 2.
Yeah, so I got married.
We just blew off number 1. Forget her.
That was just a musician thing. Like I literally married a groupie at a gig. Like
it was a brief shining moment.
Yeah, when I was 22. So that was we don't talk about that one. But then I had a real, call it a real marriage for a few years in my late 20s. But after all the craziness and going broke and being in, facing bankruptcy and losing our apartment, we had to move in with her parents. She was done. She was like, I'm out. I went and lived in the guest room. She lived in her old bedroom that she grew up in. And I was like it was the most awkward existence ever, being separated from your wife, but living with her in her parents' house.
It's worse than a bad date.
Oh yeah. It was like a bad date that lasted a year.
Yeah. It's like a Saturday Night Live skit, actually.
It really is. It was really, but here's the deal. I go into hiding. I've got all these creditors coming after me. I tell them, if anybody calls, I'm not here. And I just lock myself in my room. And I spent my last few $100s on a credit card on some online business education class or courses and like self-directed courses, right?
So you were still determined. Like,
oh yeah,
like the world is after you. But
this was going to be lucky business number 13.
Okay, no, but there's something. I mean, you were persistent, if nothing else, even in the face of bankruptcy, adversity.
Yeah, here's the deal.
Marriage.
Every failure, there was always like man, I almost got it right, and I learned this, and I know I'm smart. I was this close to figuring it out, and yeah, I'll do better next time. Like I never took on failure as my identity. I just took it on as another experience, right?
And you know what, Jeff? I want to make sure the listeners hear that, because that's huge. We all fail. And if we take failure and we internalize it and say we are a failure, you never move forward. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. And here's the thing. I had decided, and this, you mentioned things that I'm naturally good at. I'm very persistent, but also when I make a decision, I do not reverse course. Mm-hmm. And I decided when I was 16 years old that I was psychologically unfit to ever hold a traditional job. And so there was
unemployable.
There was no failure could have measured up to the failure that would have been having to go get a job.
Or the end, or you knew you would be just miserable.
Yeah. And I would make them miserable. It would just be like shared misery all around. Like I wouldn't want to employ me. I'm too strong-willed. I'm too independent. I'm too stubborn and whatever. So I knew, hey, as long as I can play the piano, I always know there will be people that it will at least trade food and shelter for my ability to play the instrument. So I never thought I was going to die. And then I just got to work. I started playing, or working on this online business thing. I started teaching myself something that in 2008 was pretty little known. It was called affiliate marketing. It's more commonly known and talked about now, but basically I was building an online business by referring people to other products and services that I didn't have to fulfill. I would just connect the vendor or the merchant with the potential customer, and I would get paid when that transaction happened. And within 18 months, I paid off $495,000 in debt. I moved out of my in-laws.
You're doing this relentlessly, like you did everything else, like
yeah. I was in that room
a day.
For literally 14 hours a day. I would sleep. I would shower occasionally. Not even as frequently as I should have. I would use the restroom, I would eat food, and I would work. And that's all I did. When you're $500,000 in debt and you feel like you just spent your best decade, right? I had basically gotten to the end of my 20s and I had learned a ton, but I dug myself a huge hole. I just felt like, man, if I don't get out of this fast, this is going to become the defining condition of my life, and I'm never going to dig out. If
you didn't pay the money off significantly, some portion of it, would you have gone to jail?
I don't think I would have gone to jail, but you cannot, these are federal liens.
Yeah. It's
like tax debt. I don't think I can take you to jail for defaulting on an SBA loan, but I don't think you can bankrupt out of them. This would have hung over me forever. And so in 18 months, I paid it off and I emerged from my cocoon and I was like, honey, we're financially free. We don't have to stress anymore. And she was like, screw you, get out of here. I don't want to be married to you anymore. So
Jeff, did you really think that would have kept the marriage together?
I did. At a certain point, and it wasn't like after 18 months, she had no idea what I was doing. All along the way, I would show her, I'm like, babe, I paid off 40 grand this month. Like I make more in a month or probably in 2 or 3 months than your dad makes all year. Like, just give me some time. Like, we're going to be okay.
Yeah, and she's thinking, but we're living in my parents' house.
Exactly. And her parents were not my biggest fans. And I have no hard feelings about any of it. And my life is great now. That's the best stuff that ever happened to me. But anyways, finally I emerged, moved to New York City, and just I did that for a year. And then I met my wife now.
Why New York? Why New York?
You want to know a funny story?
Sure.
Because my wife didn't have the balls to tell me. Can I say that on your show?
You can absolutely say that on my show. And if not, we can always cut it later. No.
Okay, good. That's good. Yeah, that's the beauty of the edit.
Listen, Jeff, I want the real deal. I want raw. I want what's going to help people. We all know life is not lollipops and rainbows. So give it.
So I'll tell you what happened then. So I'm at an event. Like I started attending these events. People would have me come speak and train at their events because I've got to be pretty well known as a really good affiliate marketer. And I was speaking at this event in Boca Raton, Florida, and I get a call from her. She says, hey, I want to move to New York because I want to go to design school. And I'm like, great. I'm making money. I'll pay for it. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, let me finish up the event and I'll just meet you there. So I end up going home. I got to pack. And then I end up moving to New York with my bags. And I'm like ready to live in New York and make this new start with her. And I'm at LaGuardia and I call her and she doesn't answer. And I'm like, an hour goes by, 2 hours go. I'm sitting at LaGuardia, like,
which is not a fun place to be.
No, it's not that great. And so finally it clicks. Like, I think she moved here to ditch me. Like, I think she didn't have the gumption to tell me.
The heart.
Yeah, heart. That would be nice. Yeah. To say, hey, listen, I'm going here and I don't want you to come. She let me come. And
maybe she didn't think you really would.
I guess, but she disappeared. She ended up moving in with a friend of hers who I knew, and her friend would not tell me where she lived, and she would not tell me where she lived. She went into witness protection. And so I
didn't want you to know, Jeff.
I'm in the city. Like, look, I'm here. Meet me for lunch. have a conversation with me. Let's hash this out. And if we're not going to be together, I'll leave. There's no reason for me to live in New York. But she strung it along for like 3 months. Like she would say that she was going to meet me and then she wouldn't. And like I said, when I make a decision, I'm really serious about keeping it. And to me, getting married was a decision. So I was going to fight for this thing.
It's a commitment. Yeah.
It's like, and it was I was trying to fight for it. And eventually I'm not a masochist. Eventually I got the memo. And, but by then I had been in New York long enough. I kind of started to enjoy it. And I'm like, wait a minute, I don't have to leave. This is New York City.
New York.
Yeah. So I stayed for a year. And then I was at another event and I met, Jacqueline, who I'm married to now, and she lived out here in St. George, Utah. And so after a few months of long distance dating her, I moved out here.
That's a great story.
Yeah. And there's a lot of twists and turns, but
I have to ask, what was the second wife's name? First name? Just give me the first name.
Her name still is Laura.
Laura. Okay. So nobody will know who Laura is.
Well, unless my friends are listening and then they'll all know, but.
Oh, well, I'm just curious. Did you ever get a chance to reconcile that relationship, at least from a
no
resolution at all, huh?
I mean,
I don't mean reconcile. I meant resolution.
Yeah. I mean, I met her for lunch once with her mom.
She needed a bodyguard.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like, but I couldn't get any answers. I couldn't get any conversation or discourse. And, because here's the thing, I think whatever, that's probably not what we need to talk about on this podcast, but no, I never really got a great resolution.
Well, the only reason why I go there, Jeff, is because entrepreneurs, we're different, right? Mm-hmm. So I would be shocked if there's more than a handful, and that's being generous, of entrepreneurs listening to this interview that have not had some type of similar story. Yeah. So I just think people are relating to you. That's the only reason why I'm asking.
And here's the thing. Her dad was a mechanical engineer.
Smart guy.
He was smart, but he was a corporate guy. He literally worked in a 8x8 office with no windows for 35 years straight. And I couldn't have been, she married the wrong guy.
Or she initially married someone that she wanted to be not like her dad, but lo and behold, she realized that's not what she wanted. So yeah. She might have did the bait and switch on.
She was not neurologically equipped to deal with the stress and the chaos that I brought into her life. And I recognize that. And I'm glad she's free of that.
But entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart.
No.
And, there's peaks and valleys. So we get that. So we wish her well.
We do.
Or I do. Maybe you don't, but I do. But anyway, and the story continues. So now you're in St. George, Utah, which is a beautiful place. Although people ask me where I'm from. And even though I live in Connecticut now, I do say I'm from the center of the universe. And somebody once looked at me and said, Chicago? I'm like, what?
That's funny.
Meaning New York. Right.
So yeah, I'm in St. George now. And I moved here in 2011. So it's been 10 years. And when I got here,
what business are you doing?
Yeah. So when I got here, I was still kind of on the tail end of my affiliate marketing days. For relative, I mean, I did well, like from 2008 to 2012, I generated close to, give or take, about $10 million in commissions on the internet.
In the middle of a recession, mind you.
It was
a big recession.
Yeah, exactly. And so like I was doing great. I moved out here. I was kind of getting burned out on that business. And I was always fighting with Google and algorithm changes. And it was just technical and annoying. So I moved out here. I kind of took about a year off to just be here, get married. My wife had 3 kids at the time and I ended up adopting those kids. So they're now my kids too. And
awesome. Congratulations.
Which is wonderful. Yeah. That really is the best thing that ever happened to me. But so then 2013, I started a digital agency. I said, okay, I'm kind of ahead of the curve here on the shift from analog to digital in terms of marketing and advertising.
2018, you said, right?
No, this was 2013.
Okay. Because 2000, I was going to say 2018. I don't think you were quite ahead of the curve.
Yeah, no, it was early. This is when like your average local business owner, like a plumber, a roofer, a pizza parlor, they were tired of wasting money on Yellow Pages ads that didn't work like they used to. And they were going, okay, fine. I got to get in on this Google thing or this internet thing. Right. And so I started an agency and we created some low-level products that would help small business owners migrate onto the internet off of their old paper and traditional advertising. And I scaled that over a little over 5 years. We ended up doing about 30 close to $35 million in revenue in 5 years. And I was the sole owner, 20% profit margins. Like, again, I had a great life and was doing well and scaled that and ended up being on the Inc. 5000 a couple of times. And then in 2018, I sold that business to a software company that just wanted the customer list.
Is that right? That's all they wanted? That's all they wanted was the customer list?
Yeah, they just wanted the customer list. They basically want to take my customers and migrate them onto their software.
To theirs, yeah.
And so, I was like it was a small but multiple 7-figure exit. So I had a payday. I was like, man, and I looked at I remember taking stock. This was September 2018 when I did that deal. And I looked at where I had been 10 years prior. And I mean, I have right here, I have my tax return from 10 years prior where my income was negative $40,000, and I was $500,000 in debt, right? So I was looking at my life going, man, this broke jazz musician in 10 years went from rock bottom to, at that time I was 39 and I was basically ready to retire. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I can't stop. I got to tell everybody how I did it. Because there's nothing I did over those 10 years that the average Joe out there couldn't have done. Like I'm smart and I'm persistent, but like put most of us against a wall and we can be smart and persistent. I mean, I have a pretty high regard for what the average human is capable of. And, most of it is about limiting beliefs. It's about self-doubt. It's about insecurity. It's about taking on failure as an identity. It's about never letting go of that mean comment that our granddad made to us when we were 6 years old. But there was nothing I did that anybody else couldn't have done. And so I'm like, I need to go start telling the world how, these different aspects of what I've done. First of all, professionally and financially, just the mechanics of how did I use these new opportunities of the digital economy to create not only financial abundance, but also a really awesome lifestyle for myself where I'm not having to commute. I'm not having to clock into work. All these things that have now become fashionable post-pandemic. Mm-hmm. I started creating for myself back in 2009 because I was using online business.
Yeah, back then you were a unicorn.
Yeah. So I'm like, I need to teach people that. And then I'm also really passionate about both physical wellness and also, personal development and psychology and stuff. So I kind of bundled together this whole conversation that I started having online around really just how to level up your life. Mm-hmm. And I started putting out free content in October 2018. I published my first video and these videos just caught on. I was, I think part of it is I wasn't selling anything. I wasn't asking for anything. I was a real person that had a real story that checked out. I was a dad. I had 4 kids. I was a husband. Like, I seemed to pass people's sniff test. Mm-hmm. And I was just having honest conversations about what it takes to be really successful in the modern world.
And these videos were put on YouTube, I take it?
I was putting them on Facebook and YouTube.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And YouTube. But mostly I was getting a lot of traction initially on Facebook. And gosh, by the end of, so I started that in September of 2018. By July 2019, so it was about 10 months, I had 2 million people watch my videos on Facebook.
Wow.
And Facebook lets you retarget people that have watched your videos, right? Mm-hmm. So what I did was I put together a course called the Entre Blueprint. That's like my one, it's basically it takes about a week to go through. It's like a 1-week class on the fundamentals of becoming a modern entrepreneur. I launched the course. I started running ads that targeted all the people that had seen my videos. Mm-hmm. And it just caught on. It's now, that was 2.5 years ago, and I'm still selling that course. Obviously I've built a whole infrastructure behind it, but that's now the best-selling online business course in history.
What do you think it is about that course that so resonated with people?
We've sold 210,000 units of that course. I mean, it's pretty crazy. Right. It's the feedback we get, and anybody that goes through it, you can see all the comments. They're unfiltered. It's if somebody has a bad comment, we don't like filter it out or anything, but we never get them. But what people always say is, this is the first online business course that I've ever been through that actually tackles the entirety of my life, that talks about physical. We have an anchor concept called the 3 Ps: physical, personal, and professional success, in that order. And I say a lot of stuff in this course that is counterintuitive if your goal is trying to sell courses on entrepreneurship, because I'll say to people, look, if you haven't demonstrated through consistent daily habits that you have the ability to take good care of yourself physically, and then secondarily or next, the people close to you personally, if you don't have great relationships with yourself and the people close to you, by what right or sanity can you say, I'm going to go out to the market and give value to thousands of people and expect them to pay me and transact, and I'll take great care of y'all? Never mind the fact that I can't take care of myself, but you can trust me with your money because I'll take great care of you, Mr. Customer. Like, that doesn't even make sense. So I'll hit people where it's at and be like, look, you came here because you want to make a lot of money. You came here because you want to build a successful business. Try getting up early and actually going to the gym for once.
Well, I it's funny. I don't find that counterintuitive at all, because I work with people in all different aspects of their relationship. And depending upon what platform I'm speaking at, I'll ask the question, what's the most important relationship in your life? And if I'm talking to business partners, they'll say my business partner. If I'm talking to someone that's entrepreneurs that are a couple, they'll talk about their intimate partner. I'm like, no, look in the mirror. It's you.
Yep.
Absolutely you. And then when you say that, they're like, but we're at this juxtaposition of, when you say you take care of yourself, sometimes there's this whole, well, then you're being narcissistic out there. There's plenty of narcissism out there, but taking it, you can't pour from an empty cup kind of thing.
Self-interest is not narcissism.
Right. And self-growth is not.
Right.
So that's a great platform. And if you don't take care of yourself in all the aspects, including physical, how are you going to have the energy to take care of anybody else?
And I'll tell you how I came up with this philosophy. So, I moved here as a successful internet marketer, 2011, making decent money, rah, life is good. But moving in with my wife and her 3 kids, who I'm now kind of beginning to become the father figure to, I had a lot of existential challenges, like who am I and what do I stand for? And what do I actually do for a living? And what value am I really creating in the world? And, how do I deserve the respect of these children to where they would buy into? How old were they,
Jeff? How old were the kids when you first moved in?
They were 8, 7, and 2.
And sex?
8 and 7. I almost said yes. Like, yes, my wife and I were, but I'm like, no, wait, that can't be what she was.
No, I know you had a 4th together. I figured that one out. I'm quick that way.
They were 2 boys, 8 and 7 were boys, and 2-year-old was a girl.
Right. And I asked because the dynamics are different with boys and girls raising them, but there's nothing like having children in your life in any capacity, but certainly living with them, that just makes you wonder about everything.
Totally.
There's nothing like it.
And to have these, and here's the thing, they didn't have to accept me as their dad.
Oh, believe me.
Now,
and you can't make kids do anything.
Their biological dad was passed away.
Okay.
So there was a gap, there was a void, but it was still on me to earn the right to fill that void.
Sure.
And so I had a lot of questions about myself. And anyway, we ended up going to therapy and did a lot of therapy. Like, I'm a therapy junkie. And in therapy, I went to therapy to improve myself personally and to heal some physical wounds and, emotional, psychological wounds. I had no idea how much better therapy was going to make me at business. Things like empathy, responsive listening, thinking win-win, communicating softly, nonviolent communication, substituting encouragement for praise. All these concepts I was learning as parenting concepts or marriage concepts, I started applying them in business. And that's why my agency did so well, honestly. And so when
you don't have to convince me. I started out doing marriage therapy, and an entrepreneur asked me if I could do it for their business. And I'm like, I don't know. And as you know, there's very few real business problems. There's personal problems that show up as business problems.
Amen. And
the empathy and the trust is key. I am so happy you had such a great experience, because therapy can be a lot like coaching. There are great ones and there are horrible ones. And then there's the whole spectrum.
And it takes a lot, and it's a slow burn. Like, it takes a lot of time. I've probably done 5,000 hours of therapy, either group work, classes, individual sessions. I did really close-knit group work for like 4 hours a week for like 2 years straight, helping people work through abuse and addiction, and kind of became like I would call it a light facilitator. I kind of reached a level in the class where the therapist would ask me a lot to help and support. Developed some, like I said, some proficiency or some competence in how humans really work. And it paid such dividends in business that when it came time to create a business class, I ended up spending most of the class talking about physical self-care and physical habits and personal habits and personal communication style and human, transactional analysis of human interaction. And then I would paint the picture of the business landscape and, hey, here's what's out there. But it wasn't like here's how to run a Facebook ad, which I think is what people were expecting. And it was so refreshing that, I guess it just caught on.
It's so funny you say that, because whenever I coach and consult, especially with businesses, I always first ask personal questions. Like, just tell me what you're comfortable with. They're always shocked because they always expect a business coach or a consultant to come in and just go right to the bottom line. And I'm like, I need to know who you are, because hopefully you have a whole life outside of this job. Hopefully,
although a lot of entrepreneurs don't, unfortunately.
And wherever you go, there you are. Well, then if we're working with them, it's our business to show them that they're missing a whole piece of themselves. And, and if you think about it, just being a parent, as you mentioned earlier, what is a better breeding ground for growth than being a parent? Like, you could be having the best day on the planet, right? I have 4 kids too. And you walk in the door and your kids just cut you to the quick. Like you could be walking on air and they say something and you're like, but it's the whole balance of life, and you grow from it and you learn, and there's brutal honesty there that you take that, you bring that into your business, and you'll be, as you said, you'll be very successful. So I'm so impressed, like, good for you.
Well, yeah, it was, when I started it, I know I have a lot of friends in the online education space and, kind of these guru guys that make these courses. And I remember talking to a few of them about it, and they're like, Jeff, you can't, like, that's crazy. That's not going to work. You can't say that. You can't lead with that. And basically they said, if people buy a business course, they do not want to hear about personal development. They do not want to hear about mindset. They only want the tactics. And I'm like, I refuse to give tactics to people that are not strategically and systemically equipped to be successful with those tactics. I'd rather tell them the truth up front and then they go refund the course. And apparently when you err on the side of radical candor and transparency, there's an appetite for that. And all these people that were supposedly going to refund, instead, they ended up telling their friends.
Well, you can't teach a blind person to see. And that's what all these other people are doing. And that's why there's so much, I'll use the kind word, noise out there. Yeah. It's noise.
And it's been an amazing ride. Entre now, we're the fastest growing education platform in the world.
Unbelievable.
We've in July. So I don't know, 30 months, roughly 2.5 years. I don't want to beat my chest, but we've put up some pretty crazy numbers and are, like I said, we're enrolling more students right now than every university in the state of California put together.
Who's your ideal client? Who's your ideal person?
Honestly, that's one of the reasons we're successful, is because we deal at a very fundamental human level. We say, look, like we're not saying you have to quit your job. We're not saying you have to have certain technical skills. We're not saying you have to be naturally salesy and get on the phones. Like, we're not saying, well, bring me anyone. Like, I actually want to make a TV show. I actually tried pitching this to a TV producer the other day, and I had the email wrong, and I need to find the guy and resend it. But I want to make a TV show where basically I work with just 10 average, I call them average Joes, right? Give me just everyday, ordinary people that make average incomes, have average health, average relationships, average lives, and give me a year. I don't think there's anyone on earth that I can't help find their path and unlock their potential of what they were born to be in this world. And at Entre, we take them all. That's honestly why I think we're doing well.
So what do you think, and I know there's several and you've mentioned several, but what do you think is the biggest obstacle to most people's success / happiness?
Well, I believe very much in the concept that, happiness derives from the sense of progress. And that if we're moving in a direction that we see as, roughly the desired state of our life. Everybody has a current state and a desired state, right? And as long as we're making progress in that direction, we feel happy. Honestly, even if we never get there, we could spend 85 years just kind of heading generally in that direction and never even arriving, because you never really arrive anywhere, right? In life. And I think we'd feel happy. I think the sense of feeling stuck or stagnant is actually synonymous in most cases with unhappiness or even a lot of like depression and such. And so, you know, what we do with a lot of people is kind of like hacking away all the brush and pulling apart the foliage so they can actually see a path. And if they can see a path in the modern world that reasonably leads to where they want to go, we call it personalized education. I think, you know, Uber has disrupted transportation. Airbnb has disrupted lodging. I mean, all these platforms have disrupted, but what education hasn't been disrupted yet. And it's been technologized, it's been digitized, but it hasn't been disrupted, because until people are getting education that is personalized and based on where they actually want to go with their lives and begins with their end in mind, not all the stakeholders in education, they have an agenda for the student. The colleges want you to go to, you know, be employed at certain places and be a part of certain alumni groups and make certain alumni contributions. The employers want you to have certain majors. The professors want this. The banks want this. The credit card companies want this. The government wants you to take FAFSA loans and spend 25 years repaying them. All the stakeholders in education. Don't even get me
started on that one. Don't even get me started on that one.
Nobody has created a platform that is what we're calling personalized education. That's the category.
So what you're saying, Jeff, is I think there's an expression, something about don't let school get in the way of your education.
Yeah, that's a Mark Twain quote. Never let school interfere with your education.
So I'd like you to address this. Education, other than some basic tenets, right? Like if you're going to be an engineer, if you're going to be a physician, yes, there's certain skill sets you have. But for the average person, and by definition, most of us are average, the definition, right?
Right.
Education is supposed to teach us to critically think. Now, that's the process of it. That is really the value of education, so that we can understand, sort out, create, interpret knowledge.
Right.
How can you address that challenge? Because Lord knows, especially I have 2 master's degrees and a doctorate and all this other certification. I was a formal educational junkie. I don't think I would be that today, because everybody has an agenda for what they are teaching you. It's almost like the news. Can you give me a newspaper or a channel to watch that is just the facts?
Right.
I can critically think. What was that? Walter Cronkite, right? Just the facts. So Jack Friday.
Jack Friday.
We're dating ourselves, Jeff. Just the facts. I can interpret them for myself. I don't need some yin yang interpreting it for me. So how is your platform addressing that?
So we have something we call the wheel of growth. And basically what we do is we define all the different factors that contribute to where you are in life and the current upper limit of your potential in life.
Is that from like Paul J. Myers?
No, this is something we created.
Okay.
And it's basically, we quantify knowledge is an important piece of the equation, but also your environment, which is like your family and your community and your society. And that for so many people, that's actually the governor of their potential. That's the foundation. And they can, until they maybe do a lot of work, environmental restructuring and even internal work, they're never going to be able to transcend, whatever thermostat setting their environment has set for them. Right.
Well, that environment, in fact, set the internal thermostat.
It did. And here's the thing, college, like your average college campus, that may be a change of environment, but that is not an environment that is conducive to success.
Oh, of course not.
It's conducive to a lot of other things.
Right.
Your habits, there's 4 parts to the wheel of growth, and each part has 3 subparts: knowledge, environment, habits. Like you are what you do every day, right? What does it say? We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not a virtue, but a habit. That's Aristotle, right? And resources, your capital, your tools, your strategic relationships. And so you can look at traditional education and say, all right, doesn't do squat when it comes to developing, physical or personal habits. So there's three types of habits: physical, personal, and professional. It doesn't do squat for physical or personal habits. There's three types of knowledge: strategic, tactical, and intuitive. School, for the most part, only delivers tactical knowledge. Your environment, school essentially is of no benefit. You just swap out one bad environment for another in many cases. And resources, capital, tools, and relationships, depending on what degree you get, maybe you'll get some strategically valuable relationships. It's going to hurt you on the capital side because you're going to come out of it with debt, not credit. Tools, so they don't even come close. What we do is we've built an ecosystem, a platform that has strategic components that address every single aspect of that wheel. And we educate the whole person, and we empower the whole person. And we're willing to have conversations that I think universities or schools are scared to have. We're like, we'll tell somebody, listen, you're in a sales position and you're 80 pounds overweight. Nobody's going to buy from you because they don't trust a guy that can't put down the donut.
And a guy can get away with it even more so than a woman, if the truth be told.
And God forbid that a university says that to someone, but we will, because they came to us to help them be successful.
But we all know the truth.
Yeah, and they don't want us to lie to them. Like, we don't get paid to lie to them. I mean, I guess we could, but we'd rather tell the truth and give them the complete puzzle set,
I love that. Here's what's so interesting to me. So in the book, I'd love to say that I came up with this, but I didn't. In the book, The Art of Impossible, right? Now, as a relationship expert, relationships that drive the bottom line, I truly believe that, okay? And I always say all success, all of it, every aspect of your life is predicated upon the ability to create, nurture, and sustain healthy relationships. So now what The Art of Impossibility talked about in terms of getting into the flow, and even though I knew this, they said it in a way where I was like, I can finally speak about it coherently, is that people that have support systems and healthy relationships in their life will be more successful when faced with the challenge. Gross oversimplification. Why? Because they have a cheering squad, as opposed to getting in their head. I don't know if I can do it. And I know I can speak for myself. Everything I do, my husband is amazing. And I'm like, I don't know. He goes, are you kidding me? Of course you can. What?
Right.
And if you don't, you'll learn. Like an unbelievable support system. Look, he didn't write my books. He's not on this podcast with me now, right? He didn't write but he created an environment that created a structure that supported me. So, it's whatever time it is now. It's after 5:00 now. I haven't even thought about dinner. As a matter of fact, I won't think about dinner. He'll think about dinner because he knows I'm doing this. Right? That is invaluable. You don't hear people talking about that in a business success capacity, but it sounds like you guys do that.
Yeah. I mean, we teach people, pretty profound concepts around communication. Like in the Entre Blueprint, I talk a lot about nonviolent communication, the work of Marshall Rosenberg, which you may be familiar with, and really retraining how people think. I mean, yeah, of course, as a, family psychologist, or are you a psychologist or psychiatrist?
I have a PhD in clinical psychology, but I do coaching, but gosh, does it help me understand human behavior? So
you know all about nonviolent communication, but as far as I know, I'm at least in terms of online business courses, I'm the first person to connect that to how it's going to help your professional life.
Wow.
And how it's going to help you build alignment and loyalty and camaraderie and a different culture within your team. I use this stuff every day inside of Entre, and I look at the culture. We have people that have come to us now that we're a big, fast growing company, hyper growth company. We have people that have come to us from Coca-Cola. We have people that have come to us from LinkedIn. We have people that have come to us, and they're like, I cannot believe there is a successful company that has a culture like this.
And for the record, your company is known for having one of the best cultures.
Well, that's really sweet to hear. Please elaborate. That's exciting.
It's true. And I'm not going to say it. Just to make you feel good. So you just talked about Coca-Cola, an iconic brand, right? You just talked about LinkedIn, an iconic brand. So what are you doing? What did you create that differentiates you from everybody else that, oh, by the way, you're the fastest growing company online educational platform, right? So what are you doing?
Yeah. I mean, you mean to create that culture? You mean internally?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. We just, we had a conversation today on a leadership development call. We're really into leadership development. We have I think our company has actual employees. It's like 130, counting like key vendors and contractors, like 190.
And all virtual, I take it. All virtual.
Oh, yeah. No office. I'm in the office and it's only me in here.
Right.
And
me
it's
too.
down the road from my house. Right. But yeah, so, we're really into leadership development. So about a quarter of our company is part of a leadership development group. Actually, probably closer to a third. It's over 50 people. On it today, I was talking about, in your role as a manager or a director or an executive or a team lead or whatever, Jeff Bezos, we don't have to love everything about him, and people can take shots at Amazon, but the guy knows a thing or two about hiring great people. If you really look at what Amazon has done, and he has 3 conditions for hiring that he talks about. And what I love about him is they have nothing to do with somebody's technical or tactical aptitude for the role that they're being hired for. He hires along 3 lines. One is this a person I'll admire? 2 is this a person that will raise the level of effectiveness of any team they're a part of? And 3 is, along what dimension will this person be a superstar in a way that has nothing to do with their job? And so what I was telling the team, I was like, this is so cool because it assigns a qualitative value to the human being, not just the worker in the role. Right. And at Entre, I want us to always be evaluating ourselves as managers and leaders not by is the work getting done? Are the boxes getting checked? But are my people thriving? Are they turning into superstars? Are they blossoming physically, personally, and professionally? The same thing that we teach our students, we must be the stewards and the best students of ourselves. There can be no hypocrisy here. So everybody that works at Entre knows they're in a place where we genuinely want them to thrive. We want them to say, man, it's been a year. I can't believe how that working at this company, my marriage has changed because the energy I come home with every day, or when I log off of Slack or Zoom or whatever, is different. And I'm in a different space. And we bring in, metaphysics and qualitative concepts. And we talk a lot about psychology, and we don't differentiate between the result we're trying to provide for our students and the result we're trying to provide for our employees and our team, which is just to create a better quality of life. And the thing is, we mean it. We don't just say it, we actually mean it. And I know a lot of people say it. A lot of this stuff is buzzwordy, and stakeholder capitalism is all the new rage, but you got to mean it. You got to be willing to lose money to mean it.
Right. Well, when you mean it, when you give your people permission to fail, now you fail fast, you fail forward, and that person gets promoted.
Yeah, it's true.
When's the last time somebody failed? When companies say it's okay to fail. And then now, of course, there's all these other variables involved, right? But, Richard Branson said it, you take care of the people, they'll take care of the employees, of the customers. It's a no-brainer, but the educational system, and of course, if you go to the corporate world, it's such a broken bottom line every quarter. It's inhumane. It's lost all compassion, and
it is, and you're seeing it. And that's why people are, 4.5 million people a month are quitting their jobs and not going back. And as far as I'm concerned, they can keep doing that because a lot of those people, they're coming to Entre. So, well,
and I have to tell you, I every day, like my niece, one of my nieces has 3 girls. One of my other nieces has 4 boys. They're both working. They're home. The kids are home. They're not home. They're quarantining. When I had 4 kids, my oldest are identical twins. My 3rd son was born when my oldest was 2. So I had 3 boys, 2 were preemies, 2 and under. Like that was not a walk in the park for a couple of years. It was great now, but for 2 years, my husband and I did not sleep more than 2 hours in a row. And I'm not joking. I have the backs to prove it. No joke. Then I had my daughter. So I had 4 kids in 6 years. No complaints. I mean, I am so blessed. They are so awesome. But I will tell you, I was exhausted when everything went according to plan. And I mean, there was one, like I'd be at work and like, oh, it's a Wednesday. They're getting out early. I'm on a coaching call with somebody, like the CEO doesn't really care, right? It's like,
Right.
shoot me now. I can't imagine what working parents today are doing in this environment with like you guys, you must be in the middle of it with the COVID and everything with your kids. Are you guys dealing with the whole kids home, not home?
Oh,
You have and
no. So
employees.
Utah, they've gone back to school, but they were home for a while. Yeah, no, they're back in school now, and it's, is
What
what
about
it is.
your employees though? Do you know what they're dealing with? Like, do you have your finger on that pulse?
Yeah, I mean, it varies. I mean, we have employees in employees are different staff members in like 11 or
Right.
12 different countries. So
Right. So in London, it's like
there's
shut down.
craziness. Yeah.
Right. So my point is though, when you address that whole person, that need will get met. And
Yeah.
there's not a lot of companies out there doing that. And that's why they're flocking.
And here's the thing, companies, they make this so complicated. Listen, like if somebody's listening and you're like in HR or upper management at a big company, let me just tell you, stop making it so complicated.
Yeah.
Just show gratitude to your people. 90% of all people that quit their job, when ultimately asked why, is it because I didn't feel valued. I didn't feel appreciated. Just show gratitude. It's freaking free. You've got all these expensive initiatives. You're installing foosball tables and cereal bars and childcare and library. You're building a library in your office that nobody even wants to be at. Just let them know that you value them.
Right.
How hard is that?
Pick up the phone to say thank you. No, I just said this to somebody the other day. So what would happen, a CEO, what would happen if you picked up the phone and said to an employee, middle level appointment, hey, how you doing? They'll be like, good.
Right.
Good. And like he goes, and then ask the work. I said, no, just checking in. Want to know how things are going. Be nice if you knew if they had a spouse in the first name, like be nice if you knew a little bit about them, but I just wanted to check. They will get off the phone and they will start texting. You're not going to believe it. So-and-so just texted me. No, but that creates that culture of concern and caring.
Yeah, and I think companies should be taking the win that they've been given to not try to bring people back to the office. I have found that having a virtual workforce, you know what we don't have in our company are like cliques of cool, good looking people. We don't have it because everybody's somewhat faceless and nobody's like, you know how it is, like, oh yeah, so-and-so in accounting is hooking up with so-and-so in HR and now they've got a thing and they triangulate and they exclude so-and-so. Like we don't have any of that stuff. It's a meritocracy. All communication bridges are equal. Nobody's in closer proximity to anyone else. I think that companies should be using this as an opportunity, not to try to get back to the way things were, but to really, really own how miserable they made the workplace.
Well, here's the thing. I actually just read this saying, before companies were saying, oh, we need people in the office because of productivity. Well, guess what? Productivity went through the roof. So now they're saying, well, we need people back for the culture. And what I think I read this on LinkedIn. They said, well, every time you read that and you see the word culture, just substitute the word control. Like we need to control people. And the problem is they're trying to use an old solution for a new situation. Like it's a new paradigm shift, but that's a whole other conversation. So I have a couple of questions for you before we stop, because I could talk to you forever. I think our listeners have gotten so much value. Like, well, I am dying to know, do you have a next gig in mind or are you still all in with this?
Oh yeah, we're going big with Entre. We've got really, really ambitious goals for this next year. We're right in the middle of a unicorn hypergrowth story. And so it's, I could, even as a good entrepreneur, I could entrepreneur for 100 lifetimes and never have this opportunity again. I mean, this, we're simultaneously disrupting and creating a creating we're doing to
that's
education.
Innovation.
We're doing to education what Airbnb did to hotels 10 years ago. And so, I'm all in on this one and I'm going to see it through. And I do have a book coming out in August. I'm really excited about.
Tell us.
It's called Escaping the Broken System.
Okay.
How to, it's like, get out of ditch the rat race and create your dream life in the new economy, basically.
Is that it? Let me see.
Yeah, that's pretty close to it. And it's, that'll be all over.
Escaping the Broken System.
Yeah. And it'll be all over in bookstores. It's not self-published. It's actually
by Ben Bella Books.
That's right.
Coming out in spring, 2022.
That's right. August 2nd, pub date.
There you go.
So I'll be doing the media circuit, and supposedly
hang on. I want people to find out more about you, but I just have two more questions for you. One is, what is a major misconception people have about you that you'd prefer not to correct?
That I would prefer now to correct? You said?
That you would prefer not to correct, but of course I'm going to ask you to correct.
Oh, okay. I think it works pretty well that a lot of people think of me as like, at least for the time, that a lot of people think of me as like a guy that teaches you how to make money, because money is the least interesting part of the whole equation for me to talk about. I recognize money as like a long-term outcome of doing a lot of other things intentionally. Mm-hmm. But if people think that Jeff has some magic oracle skill to like anoint you to be a, high earning person, then that probably serves me.
And you know what? I do think that's a misconception, because when people read about you and your company, there is a lot about that on the internet. So that's
what people want. It's
people see what they want to see, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. And then the other thing I'd like to know is, for you, I'm going to ask it this way. If you could be any musician in the history of the world, who would you want to be and why?
Honestly, Johann Sebastian Bach.
Oh, why? Great. Oh, why?
Because his endless creative just output and his ability to improvise. I mean, he could improvise, this may not mean much to a lot of people. He could improvise fugues. Like a fugue.
What does that mean to people? Go ahead.
So a fugue is like a fairly complex melody line, right? Okay. Like take a song that that has a fairly complicated melody line, right?
Like the music sheet has a lot on it.
Yeah. And a fugue will take that line and start it at different times, running it in parallel. So it'll start playing it, and then like 4 bars later, it'll start playing it again in a different hand. And then it might even cross it back up to where now one hand is playing the same line in the same hand, but in different places in the line at the same time. And then it comes in a third line in the left hand. And he could improvise 4-part fugues. Imagine reading a poem. Like the only way I can describe it is imagine 4 people reading a poem at the same time, but starting at different times. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And one person being at the center of that, able to keep track of all of it and actually do it all themselves somehow.
Wow.
It's hard to translate to non-musical terms, but the guy was just a phenom.
Awesome. Oh, this was so great. Let people know how they can find out more about you, or tell them about your book, whatever you'd like people to know.
Yeah. So I got the book.
People are going to want to hear more about you.
No, I just honestly come to YouTube or Instagram and look for Jeff Lerner. I have about 700 free training videos on YouTube. So you could spend months, if not years, just learning from me for free on YouTube. And I talk about all kinds of stuff, a lot of success, a lot of mindset, some tactical marketing, copywriting, like some stuff that's skills based. And then on Instagram, please follow me there, but also be wary that there are some scammers out there in the world that like to pretend to be me. So
how did I know? You have the little blue check?
No, I'm still going back and forth with Instagram. That's this whole separate conversation. But I'm Jeff Lerner Official. I'm the only Jeff Lerner Official. But if you sign up if you follow Jeff Lerner Official and then you get hit up by real Jeff Lerner or Jeff Lerner.official, just know I'm only one. Accept no invitation.
All right. Thank you so much. So thank you, everybody. I knew Jeff would deliver. That was amazing. And since I do know that you love this podcast, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe to The Trust Doctor. See you later.
Once again, we've concluded another great episode of The Trust Doctor with Dr. Patty Ann. Tune in next week for more insights and advice on how you can create, nurture, and sustain healthy relationships. To find out more about the podcast, visit drpattyann.com/podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, and share. Until next time.